Hey everyone, it's Mrs. Wallace. I just want to give you the rest of the video. Sorry, it got cut off. All of a sudden there were all these pop-ups and it all got recorded. So sorry about that. But just a couple of things about segregation in New Jersey. One of the sources for a lot of information about segregation in New Jersey comes from this UCLA report. The Civil Rights Project at UCLA did a report in 2010, and then they did a secondary report in 2017. So I'm just going to use some data from that report, and I actually attached the report in the Schoology post too. So if you want to check it out, you might want to look at the first 10 pages or so. It's a lengthy report, but at the very end, in the very beginning, there's a summary of some of the things that the group had found. So one thing to note is in terms of just some general demographic trends, the student population of Black students is about 16% across the state of New Jersey. For white students, we're looking at maybe 46 or so percent. I'm doing this off the top of my head, so I think that's about right. And in those two cases, these are populations that are actually declining, especially the white population was much higher in the last 2 decades or so. In the case of Asian students, it's about 10%. That's a group that's seeing growth across the state. And then also for students who identify as Hispanic, it's about 25 to 26%. That's also a group that's growing in terms of numbers of students across the state. One of the things that this particular study focuses on, there's kind of two trends that they focus on. Then there's a whole bunch of additional things, but we'll just kind of note two trends. One thing that this report suggests, something that's a little bit of good news in terms of like greater diversity or less segregation. The report highlights areas where there is what's called like multiracial schools that have at least 10% of at least 3 different racial groups. So student populations representative of at least 10% of the student body from a variety of different racial groups. The multiracial schools are actually increasing across New Jersey, and in many ways, New Jersey is becoming a state with greater diversity. So in a lot of ways, we see some very good trends, and we're probably in terms and compared to other places across the country, a space, where we see a great deal of diversity. At the same time, we have many students throughout the state who are experiencing schools where very, very few people in the school don't look like them. So kind of if we look at students who identify as Black, if we look at the bar that's representing 2015, 2016, it's the darkest bar in the list here. So if we look at what's the percentage of students who are Black, for example, who attend a school where 50 to 100% of the students are non-white, that would be about 81.5%, and about almost 80% of Hispanic students attend a school where 50 to 100% of the students are non-white. If we look at what percentage of students who are Black attend a school where 90 to 100% of the students are non-white, that would be 48.9%, 43.3% in the case of Hispanic students, and this is a number that's actually been increasing a great deal. We're seeing some of the biggest increases in school segregation affecting the Latinx community in New Jersey. The percentage of Black students who attend a school where 99 to 100% of the students are non-white is 27.2. So about 1 in every 4 Black students attends a school which is almost 100% non-white, and also about 14.5% of Hispanic students are attending a school that's 99 to 100% non-white. The other way you could look at some of this data is just by mapping it. There's a lot of ways to map, and certainly school segregation is not consistent as an issue all across the state. Something you can note here is you'll see the sections that have the diagonal lines. Those are sections of the state where school districts are 90% to 100% white. So lots and lots of segregation that's primarily students who are white. And then we also have a great deal of school districts where we see segregation in terms of like 90 to 99% of the students are non-white, for example. So something just to kind of look at as a map. There's a lot of other data in this report. There's also a lot of discussion about the way in which segregation can be harmful. It creates a great deal of not only, isolation in terms of misunderstanding and stereotypes and things like that, but we know from research, from following students who have been in an integrated environment, some of the benefits of integration tend to be lower dropout rates, also greater income over the course of one's life and things like that. In terms of solutions for addressing segregation in New Jersey, and this kind of goes back to the last slide that had on it the Latino Action Network court case. This is kind of a class, it's an action that involves several organizations. So Latino Action Network, also NAACP, there's some other organizations as well. And they are pursuing a case which suggests that segregation is unconstitutional in New Jersey. It also violates the thorough and efficient clause of the state constitution. And as a result, they're asking the state government to come up with a plan to address segregation in New Jersey. Some ideas for doing that. There's been a lot of discussion at the state level, at the county level for addressing school segregation. These are some ideas. Your ideas can, build upon these. You can research these further. You can also create, new ideas that don't, kind of show up on this list. But a few things might be ranked regional schools, so providing students in New Jersey with a choice of 3 different schools that they could choose from. Even if it's a school outside of their neighborhood, they might be able to, most of the segregation issues in New Jersey are not within the same school district. Back in earlier times, there used to be busing sometimes between students on one side of town going to another side of town. In the segregation issues of today, most of it is not within the same district, but differences between districts. So this would create a movement of students, from one district, to a different district. So a little bit of school choice, but students getting to choose 3. Another possibility is county school districts. Actually, Salem County is interested in pursuing that so much. It's a small county and is interested in perhaps creating one solid school district that would be representative of the entire county and easier to move students around to different school buildings within that school district. There's a lot of other ways to create such mergers on more regional bases. You could have interdistrict desegregation, so actually doing something where you might have some forced busing, you might mandate, or create some laws that require some sort of movement of urban students to suburban schools and suburban students to urban schools, mix up and desegregate perhaps on a variety of different levels, racial and economic. You might also have magnet schools. So of course, like BCA is a magnet school, creating more models like that. They don't all have to have rigorous admissions. It could be open for students as a school of choice and would also create some greater diversity. There's an academy at Englewood that serves some of that purpose. 50% of the student body is from Englewood. Another 50% is from, throughout the county. No change at all. You could argue that demographics are changing, and over time, we will likely see greater diversity in many, many areas of New Jersey. So it's possible that we make no change at all. And lastly, some type of voluntary program, either incentivizing voluntary programs or requesting that some individuals participate in school desegregation efforts. That's something that could be done. Okay, I'm going to stop it there because this has been lengthy and long, and it wasn't my intention to do that. The questions are here so that you have an idea of what to prepare. I'll put a few things for you. One thing to note about that entire report. Of course, there's a lot of nuance that's missing. Once we start to categorize students as racial groups, we get the sense that there's these, racial groups that are being moved around, and perhaps what becomes the focus. But of course, within those racial groups, there's nothing monolithic. There's a great deal of variety of other variables, and lots of differences in the way groups of people may be, for example, different economic backgrounds, maybe immigrant versus non-immigrant, maybe a variety of different, variables that create very different experiences, and are also kind of important to look at in the context of school segregation. It might not be about just, only 3 or 4 different specific groups. We have to look in a much more nuanced way. And some of these reports and studies don't necessarily do that. So, ask those tough questions too of each other when you meet on Thursday. Okay, I'll see you in class.